Before we begin, let the silence settle around you. Not the kind you hear, the kind you feel crawling into the corners of the room. The story I'm about to tell wasn't meant to be spoken out loud. Someone carried it alone for far too long, afraid that saying it would make it real again. If a piece of their truth touches something you've kept buried, you can tell me in the comments. And if these quiet shadows keep pulling you back, you can like the video, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. Now don't move. Some memories wake up when they're listened to. I never thought a simple date could turn into a nightmare I'd never wake from. My name is Alex, and until that night, I'd considered myself a reasonable person. Someone who knew how to separate fantasy from reality. But what happened to me that Halloween, I still can't explain, and I don't think I ever will. It started innocuously enough. I'd met her on a dating app, a witty, charming woman named Lila. She suggested we meet for dinner at a little Italian place she claimed was hidden in plain sight. I remember thinking the place sounded cliché, but something about her confidence made me agree. I left my apartment with a sense of light-hearted excitement, the crisp autumn air brushing against my skin, carrying the faint scent of decaying leaves. The restaurant was dimly lit, with flickering candles and the smell of garlic and simmering tomato sauce thick in the air. Lila was already there, sitting at a corner table, smiling like she knew a secret I didn't. Her laughter had this soft echo, like it lingered just a fraction longer than it should. We talked, we laughed, and everything felt normal, too normal. After dinner, she suggested we walk to a little rooftop bar she knew. "It's a secret spot," she said, her eyes glinting. I didn't notice the way the streets seemed emptier as we walked, how the fog began rolling in unnaturally thick for October. By the time we reached the building, the street lamps flickered weakly, casting elongated shadows that twisted along the brick walls like they were alive. The rooftop bar was abandoned. Not a soul in sight, just the sound of the wind whipping against the railing and the faint hum of city lights far below. Lila leaned close and whispered, "I like it when it's just us." I laughed nervously, brushing it off. But even then, a part of me felt that itch at the back of my neck, the kind that warns you when something isn't right. We drank, and she touched my hand a lot, more than comfortably normal. Her touch was cold, icy even, and yet it sent a shiver down my spine. And then, suddenly I felt tired, heavy, the kind of exhaustion that wasn't from the day but from somewhere deeper. I remember telling her, maybe we should call it a night, and she just smiled. "That's the thing about tonight," she said softly. "It doesn't have to end." I laughed it off again, thinking it was a joke. But as I turned to leave, I felt a pull in the pit of my stomach, a magnetic, terrifying force holding me there. The night dissolved into darkness. When I woke, it wasn't in a hotel or my apartment. I was in my own bedroom. At first, I thought it had been a dream, just a vivid, unsettling dream. But then my phone lit up, buzzing with notifications. Dozens of new videos, each one labeled with timestamps from the hours I'd slept. Yet none of them were familiar. I opened the first one. My own face stared back at me, eyes wide and fearful, tangled in the sheets. The camera angle from the ceiling. The second video was worse, taken from the corner, showing the whole room. And there it was, Lila standing in the doorway, invisible to me at the time. I jumped to my feet, heart hammering, but the apartment felt wrong. The walls, they seemed closer. The exit doors I swore were there, the ones that led to the hallway weren't. Every window showed only blackness, like staring into an infinite void. And then I heard it, her voice soft, playful but impossible. "Did you like our date?" No one was there. I spun around, my palms sweaty, my skin crawling as the temperature dropped sharply. Cold seeped into my bones. I tried the front door, locked. The kitchen, a solid wall where there had been a pantry. Even the bedroom closet, gone. Every exit blocked. Panic clawed at my chest as I realized something impossibly horrifying. Time itself was unspooling. I glanced at my phone. The clock spun backward, each second skipping unnaturally. I was trapped, stuck in some kind of loop. I ran to my bedroom mirror, hoping to see some clue, some way out. My reflection blinked, but it wasn't exactly me. It smiled when I didn't. Lila's face overlaid mine for a split second before I stumbled back, gasping. I spent hours, I think, trying to escape, throwing myself against walls, screaming for help, pounding on every surface. But every effort brought me back to the same bedroom. The same videos appeared on my phone. The same whisper echoed in the air. And with every repetition, I noticed small differences. The blood on my sheets, the scratches on my arms, the faint whisper of movement in the corner when I wasn't looking. By the fifth loop, my mind began fraying. I remember sobbing into the sheets, begging the night to end. I could hear her walking around my apartment, though I never saw her fully. Just a shadow flitting past, a whisper in the darkness, a cold touch grazing my shoulder that wasn't there when I looked. The scariest part was that it felt almost consensual, as if part of me had wanted this, as if this date, this endless, looping horror, was somehow my punishment for something I couldn't even name. I tried reasoning, bargaining with the air, with the shadows, even with myself. Nothing worked. Eventually, I stopped trying to leave. I stopped checking the doors. I stopped looking at the videos. I lay in bed, paralyzed by fear and exhaustion, listening as the whispers circled around me like a predator toying with its prey. And then, the most terrifying thing of all happened. I started seeing her in my dreams even when my eyes were open. Her eyes, gleaming in the dark, staring at me from the corners of rooms that didn't exist, smiling with that same terrible knowing. It's been, I don't know how long. Days? Weeks? Months? Time has no meaning here. Every morning, I wake up, and it's Halloween again. Every night, the loop resets. I've learned not to fight it anymore. I lie in bed, pretending to sleep while she circles the apartment. Sometimes she whispers my name, sometimes she laughs. And sometimes, I swear she's kissing me, her cold lips brushing mine. The same touch that first drew me to her now feeling like chains. I don't know if I'll ever leave this place, or if I'll ever be the person I once was. I just know that somewhere in this looping nightmare, a date that started with laughter has become an eternity of terror. And the worst part, the absolute worst, is that I can hear her whispering just beyond the door, even now, "Did you like our date?" And no matter what I do, no matter how much I scream or run, I know the night will start over again, forever. I didn't believe in anything supernatural before that night. I was the kind of person who explained things away, drafts, stress, misfiring nerves. That's why it took me far too long to realize something was wrong. And by the time I did, it had already learned how to touch me. My name is Daniel. I was 29, working late shifts at a small architectural firm, living alone in a third-floor apartment that smelled faintly of old wood and dust no matter how often I cleaned. Halloween night had never meant much to me. I wasn't into costumes or parties. I'd agreed to go on a date mostly because I was tired of being alone, not because I was excited. Her name was Mara. We met at a quiet cafe that stayed open late for people who hated crowds. The windows were fogged from the cold outside, and the hum of traffic sounded distant, like it was coming from another city entirely. She sat across from me, hands folded neatly around a mug of tea, watching me with an intensity that felt flattering at first. Everything about her seemed composed, not stiff, just controlled. Her voice was soft but deliberate. When she smiled, it didn't quite reach her eyes, but I told myself that was nerves. People get nervous on first dates. I know I do. We talked for almost an hour. Work, movies, childhood fears. She laughed when I told her I used to be terrified of the dark, even as a teenager. I still don't like it, I admitted. Feels like things move when you're not looking. She tilted her head slightly. Sometimes they do. I laughed, expecting her to laugh too. She didn't. It happened shortly after that. The cafe lights dimmed briefly. Just a flicker, probably electrical. And in that moment, I felt a hand settle on my shoulder. Not a brush, not a graze. A hand. 5 fingers. Firm. Cold. My entire body locked up. The sensation was unmistakable, pressure sinking through fabric into muscle. sending a chill straight down my spine. I sucked in a breath and turned sharply, expecting to see someone standing behind me, apologizing for bumping into my chair. There was no one there. The aisle behind me was empty. The counter was 10 feet away. No movement. No sound except the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant clink of cups. I turned back to Mara. She was still sitting across the table, both hands wrapped around her mug, exactly where they had been the entire time. "You okay?" she asked. My mouth felt dry. "Did you just touch me?" Her eyebrows knit together, a picture of mild concern. "No, I didn't move." I laughed weakly, forcing my shoulders to relax. "Yeah, sorry. Must have imagined it." But the cold lingered. Long after the pressure disappeared, my skin felt wrong, like it had been pressed against ice. I ended the date early, claimed I was tired. She didn't argue, just stood with me outside the cafe as the wind carried the smell of wet asphalt and fallen leaves. When we said goodbye, she leaned in close, not quite touching me, and whispered, "Be careful tonight." I didn't ask what she meant. The walk home felt longer than usual. Every sound echoed too loudly. Footsteps behind me, leaves scraping along the sidewalk, the distant slam of a car door. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone there. I never did. My apartment greeted me with its usual stale warmth. I locked the door, slid the deadbolt into place, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The silence was thick, pressing against my ears. I shrugged off my jacket. That's when I felt it again. Fingers brushed the back of my arm. I spun around, heart pounding, adrenaline flooding my veins. Nothing. The living room was empty. The shadows in the corners hadn't shifted. The air felt colder, though, like the heat had been turned down without my knowledge. "Okay," I muttered. "Enough." I told myself it was stress, residual sensation, my brain replaying the earlier moment because I'd fixated on it. I turned on every light in the apartment, filling the rooms with harsh, yellow brightness that chased the shadows into submission. I made dinner, tried to distract myself with a show I'd already seen twice. But no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was close. Not watching, waiting. The next touch came when I was brushing my teeth. A slow, deliberate trail of fingers down the back of my neck. I dropped the toothbrush into the sink and grabbed the counter to steady myself. My reflection stared back at me, pale and wide-eyed, mouth hanging open. "No," I whispered. The bathroom was empty. The door stood open behind me. The hallway light glowed steadily. Then something pressed against my lower back. Not hard, just enough to let me know it was there. I screamed and stumbled forward, slamming my hands against the mirror. The pressure vanished instantly, leaving behind that same unnatural cold. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I lay down, something brushed my ankle, my wrist, my shoulder. Always brief, always gone when I reacted, like it was learning how far it could go. By morning, my nerves felt shredded. I called in sick to work, spent the day pacing, checking locks, keeping my back against walls. I avoided the windows, though I didn't know why. The apartment felt smaller somehow, the air heavier, carrying a faint scent I couldn't place, like damp fabric left too long in the dark. By evening, the touches had become more confident. A hand resting on my thigh while I sat on the couch, fingers curling briefly into my sleeve. Something brushing my hair back from my forehead, intimate and slow. "Stop," I said aloud, my voice shaking. "Please, just stop." The room answered with silence. I finally dared to look at the windows when the sun went down. At first, I didn't see anything, just my reflection distorted by the glass. Then my eyes adjusted. Faint marks were appearing on the outside. Handprints. They were pale, almost translucent, slowly blooming against the glass as if pressed from the other side. Fingers splayed wide. Too long, too thin. One by one, more appeared, sliding slightly downward, leaving streaks as if whatever was touching the window was adjusting its grip. My breath fogged the glass from the inside. The prints matched it perfectly. I backed away, my heel catching on the rug. As I stumbled, something caught my arm to steady me. A hand, cold, lingering, possessive. I screamed until my throat burned, until my voice broke into nothing. The pressure tightened just slightly, enough to remind me it could do more if it wanted to. In my mind, I saw Mara's face, her stillness, the way she'd laughed when I mentioned the dark. "You're not here," I sobbed. "You're not even in the room." The hand slid from my arm to my shoulder, squeezing gently. That's when I understood. She didn't need to be. I don't know how long I stood there, shaking, surrounded by invisible hands and fading prints. I don't remember how I got out of the apartment, only that I ran barefoot into the cold night, not stopping until my lungs felt like they were tearing apart. I haven't been back, but sometimes late at night when I'm lying still and the room is quiet, I feel it again. A familiar cold, a hand resting lightly on my shoulder, as if reminding me, distance doesn't matter anymore. I always thought I had a good sense of judgment, a good radar for red flags, for people whose intentions aren't quite right. I was wrong, very wrong, and I'll never forget the night I met her. My name is Marcus, and I had spent my 27th year believing that the world was generally safe, that strangers were just strangers, that fleeting connections could be harmless. That belief shattered one Friday night. It started innocuously. A coworker had insisted I join her at a new club downtown, a place she described as so exclusive, it feels like a secret every night. I don't usually go out like that. Loud music, sweat, and strangers pressed too close, but I agreed. I told myself it would be fun, a distraction, a way to shake off the monotony of corporate life. The club was everything my coworker promised. Dark velvet walls, neon lights slicing through the foggy air, bass rattling my chest, the smell of spilled drinks and perfume thick on the floor. The crowd moved as one pulsing organism, a river of bodies and limbs, laughter and shouting. I felt alive in a way I hadn't for months. Then I saw her. She wasn't dancing, not really. She was leaning against a wall near the bar, one shoulder brushing the shadows, eyes scanning the crowd, lips curled in a smile that seemed to exist only for me. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that smile, it pulled me in, magnetic, unrelenting, as if she had known me all my life. I approached her cautiously, unsure if I was imagining it. She turned her head slowly, as if she had been expecting me, and said my name. My stomach dropped. I hadn't told anyone I was coming tonight. "I'm Mara," she said, voice soft but commanding. "You're Marcus, right?" "Yes," I said, trying to hide how unnerved I felt. How do you know my name?" She laughed, a sound that felt like it lingered in the air too long. "I've been watching. I should have walked away. I should have run. But I didn't." Something in her gaze, in the way the lights glinted off her dark hair, made the idea of leaving impossible. We talked. We danced. I felt hypnotized. Not drunk, not high, just caught in the rhythm she dictated. Her touch was fleeting, electric, brushing my arm, grazing my back, lingering too long to be accidental. I told myself it was attraction, chemistry, nothing more. Hours passed. Music faded into muffled noise. Lights stuttered and changed. And then, finally, I told her I needed air. She smiled. "Outside?" "Yes." The street was cold, slick with rain from earlier that evening. Steam rose from manholes like miniature fog clouds, curling around streetlights. People milled about, walking past, laughing, shouting, oblivious. I thought I was safe. I thought that once we left the club, she would be just another stranger I'd never see again. She didn't follow me immediately. That gave me a false sense of relief. But when I turned the corner to get a cab, I felt her gaze before I saw her. A figure across the street, smiling, waiting, watching. And I knew in that moment she hadn't left the club. She had never left me. I tried to shake it off. "It's just coincidence," I muttered. "A stranger who looks familiar." But as I walked, every reflection in the wet windows of the closed shops carried her face. Always smiling, always watching, always close enough that my heart would hammer in panic. I hailed a cab, climbed in, and tried to convince the driver to go as fast as possible. I stared out the window, hoping the blur of city lights would erase the image. But she was everywhere. Every reflection in the glass, every passerby's face, carried the same smile, the same knowing look. She had followed me into the reflection of my world. By the time I reached my apartment, my nerves were shredded. I locked the door and leaned against it, shivering. Sweat ran down my back, though the air was cold. My breath came in shallow gasps. I thought I was imagining it. I prayed I was imagining it. I fell asleep briefly, exhaustion overtaking terror. And then, I woke to the faintest sound. A whisper. "Marcus!" I bolted upright. Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the city beyond my window. I told myself it was a dream. Just a dream. But over the next days, it got worse. Everywhere I went, her face appeared. Not always in full. Sometimes just the curve of her smile, reflected in a window, passing quickly in the crowd of strangers on the street. Sometimes in a fleeting glance in the subway. Always watching, always smiling, always knowing. I stopped going out. I stopped answering calls. I stopped texting friends. The walls of my apartment became both sanctuary and prison. I couldn't escape her intrusion. She had made my world hers. I started seeing her in mirrors. Full reflections. Sometimes behind me, sometimes beside me. Always smiling. Her eyes locked onto mine. And I felt something ancient and wrong in that gaze. Like she wasn't just observing me. She was learning me. Memorizing every detail of my face, my body, my expressions. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I ran out into the streets, into the pouring rain. I hoped that moving, that distance, would break whatever spell she had woven. Didn't. At the crowded subway entrance, I tried to blend in, hoping anonymity would help. But as I descended the steps, the lights flickering overhead, I saw her again. Reflected in the windows of the arriving train. And then, hundreds of her faces, all layered over the windows, all whispering simultaneously in tones that reverberated in my chest. "You can't hide." Panic consumed me. I stumbled into a train car, desperate to escape. But the mirrors inside showed not just the reflection of the passengers but hundreds of her faces overlaying them. Each one grinning, each one watching, each one whispering my name. I ran through the car, slamming doors, throwing myself against windows. She was there in every angle, every reflection, impossible to outrun. The other passengers didn't see her, didn't hear the whispers. They looked at me with curiosity, concern, even annoyance. I was alone in perceiving her, alone in the terror. I stumbled off the train at a random station, trying to convince myself it was temporary. A trick of light and fear. But the moment I reached the platform, I saw her again, leaning against a pillar, smiling, waiting, watching, and behind her more faces, hundreds of her faces, forming a crowd that no one else seemed to notice. I ran. I don't remember how far. The city became a blur of lights, wet pavement, and shadows that shifted unnaturally. Every reflective surface, store windows, car hoods, puddles, carried her image. I found a small diner, empty except for a tired waitress and the smell of fried eggs and coffee. I collapsed into a booth, shaking, drenched. The waitress kept glancing at me strangely, but I ignored her. I needed a mirror, needed to see if she had followed me. I didn't look directly at myself. I just glanced at the reflections in the chrome counter. And there she was, smiling, waiting, watching. I tried reasoning. "It's not real," I muttered aloud. "It can't be real." But deep down, I knew. She was real. Not in the physical sense, not like the people around me, but real enough to infiltrate my world, to alter the rules of reality itself. She had merged her world with mine. By the time I left the diner, I understood something horrifying. It wasn't about being in the same space. She didn't need to be near me to touch me, to watch me, to haunt me. She existed in the reflections, in the faces of strangers, in the edges of shadows, in the glass and metal and water. She was everywhere and nowhere. I tried going home, tried to barricade myself inside. But the moment I saw my reflection in the apartment window, I saw it again. Hundreds of her faces, layered over my own, whispering, "You can't hide." Now, I move constantly, never staying in one place for long. I avoid reflective surfaces, avoid crowds, avoid the city at night. But even when I'm alone, I sense her. The way the air changes slightly, how shadows seem to lean toward me, how my own reflection lingers a fraction too long in the corner of my vision. And I know with terrifying certainty that one day, I won't be able to escape. She will merge her world with mine completely, and I will have no choice but to be part of her crowd forever. I thought I had survived that night, but in truth, she never left. Every reflection I pass, every stranger I glimpse, every shadow I see carries her, smiling, watching, waiting, and the whispers follow me, constant, patient, inescapable. You can't hide. I used to think scent was the least threatening of the senses. Sound can startle you, sight can deceive you, touch can violate you, but smell? Smell felt passive, harmless, something you noticed and forgot. I don't believe that anymore. My name is Ethan. I'm 32, and until last October, I lived alone in a narrow, pre-war apartment above a bakery on the east side of the city. The walls were thin, the floors creaked, and the place always smelled faintly of yeast and sugar in the mornings. It wasn't much, but it was familiar, safe, predictable. That's why I noticed her scent immediately. We met on Halloween night, though neither of us was dressed for it. I'd gone to a quiet wine bar after work, the kind of place where the music stays low and conversations linger. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just a drink, maybe a distraction. She was already sitting at the bar when I arrived, legs crossed, dark coat draped neatly over the stool beside her. She turned when I sat down, and that's when the smell hit me. Roses, fresh, heavy, almost sweet enough to taste. But threaded through it was something sharper, metallic, like the faint tang of blood or pennies held too long in a warm palm. It shouldn't have worked. Those two scents didn't belong together. But somehow they did. The combination made my chest tighten, my thoughts slow, like I'd stepped into a room where the air itself demanded attention. "Sorry," she said softly, noticing my hesitation. "Too much perfume?" "No," I replied quickly, though my throat felt dry. "It's nice." She smiled at that, a slow, knowing curve of her lips. Her name was Lila. Her voice was calm, almost soothing, and when she spoke, she leaned just close enough that the scent wrapped around me again. Roses and metal, warm and wrong. We talked for hours, about nothing important. Movies, work, childhood memories that felt rehearsed. I couldn't tell you a single meaningful thing she said, only the way she said it, the way her eyes never quite blinked at the same rhythm as mine, the way the smell seemed to grow stronger the longer we sat there. At some point, I noticed other people glancing at us. Not at her, at me, like they were trying to place something familiar and unsettling. I told myself I was imagining it. When the bar closed, she suggested a walk. I hesitated. The night air was cold, sharp, carrying the damp smell of fallen leaves and distant rain. As soon as we stepped outside, her perfume cut through it all, overpowering the city itself. "You live nearby," she said, not asking. "Yeah," I answered. "A few blocks." She nodded, satisfied. I know. That should have been the moment I left her on the sidewalk. Instead, I walked her halfway, then all the way. When we reached my building, she stopped at the door. "I won't come in," she said. "Not tonight." Her smile lingered as she stepped back, dissolving into the darkness between the streetlights. The scent stayed. That was the first thing that unsettled me. Even after she was gone, even after I locked the door behind me, her perfume clung to my clothes, my skin, the air around me. I shrugged off my coat and hung it by the door. The smell didn't fade. I showered. Hot water, soap, steam. I scrubbed until my skin burned. When I stepped out, wrapped in a towel, the air in the bathroom still carried that same blend of roses and metal. "It's just in your head," I muttered, but it followed me to bed. The sheets smelled like her, not faintly, stronger than before, as if she'd been lying there already, warming the mattress. I stripped them off, replaced them with clean ones from the closet. The smell seeped through anyway, curling into my lungs with every breath. Sleep came fitfully. When I did drift off, I dreamed of standing in a field of roses, their stems sharp as knives, their petals slick and dark. I woke just before dawn, heart pounding, throat tight. The scent was stronger, filled the room now, thick enough to feel. My eyes watered. I threw open the windows, letting in the cold morning air and the distant hum of traffic. The bakery downstairs had already started up, the comforting smell of bread rising through the floorboards. The roses didn't leave. By the second night, I was panicking. I washed every surface in the apartment. Floors, counters, walls. Bleach stung my nose, burned my hands raw. The metallic undertone of her perfume seemed to mock me, cutting cleanly through the chemical bite. I threw my clothes into the wash, ran them twice. The smell lingered in the machine afterward, staining the air in the laundry room. I scrubbed my skin again and again until it felt thin, fragile. That night, as I lay rigid in bed, I heard breathing. Not mine. It came from the corner of the room, slow and deliberate, as if someone were standing just out of sight, inhaling deeply, savoring the air. With every breath, the scent intensified. "Hello!" My voice cracked. The breathing paused. Then, faintly, almost lovingly, a whisper brushed my ear. "Still smells like me." I didn't sleep at all after that. Over the next few days, the apartment changed. The walls seemed closer, the air heavier. The smell of roses and metal became constant, oppressive, like a presence that followed me from room to room. Sometimes it concentrated in one spot, the doorway, the closet, the space beside my bed, as if someone were standing there, unmoving. I tried leaving, stayed with a friend across town. The smell followed me there too, blooming in his guest room, soaking into borrowed sheets. He asked if I'd spilled something. I couldn't answer him. When I returned home, it was worse. The whispers came at night, drifting from the corners, the vents, beneath the floor. Soft breaths, murmured fragments of my name. I stopped turning on lights because they didn't help. Whatever was there didn't cast shadows. One night, half delirious from exhaustion, I felt the mattress dip beside me. The scent surged, overwhelming. Roses crushed underfoot, iron-rich and wet. I froze, eyes wide, staring at the ceiling as the breathing returned. Closer now. I felt warmth near my neck, the brush of something not quite touching. "I didn't say you could forget me," she whispered. By morning, my voice was gone. I tried to escape again. I packed a bag, opened the door and stopped. Her initials were carved into the wood of the doorframe. Deep, deliberate cuts, the grooves dark and glossy, as if the wood itself had bled. Fresh, the scent poured from them. I stumbled back, heart hammering, bile rising in my throat. That was when I noticed the floor beneath my bed. The boards had been pried up slightly, as if something beneath them had pushed upward. Kneeling, trembling, I slid my fingers into the gap and pulled. The board came free with a wet, sucking sound. Beneath it, carved into the subfloor, were her initials again. Larger this time, the edges were raw, splintered. Dark liquid pooled in the grooves, sticky and unmistakably red. Blood. It was still wet. I screamed then. I don't remember stopping. The police didn't believe me. They never do. They saw no blood, no carving, no damage. They smelled nothing unusual. One officer suggested stress. Another suggested I get some sleep. The moment they left, the scent returned in full force, flooding the apartment like a held breath finally released. That night, I didn't bother lying in bed. I sat against the wall, knees to my chest, eyes burning. The breathing circled me, slow and patient. The whispers grew clearer. "You let me in," she said gently. "You breathed me in. That's all I needed." Something pressed against my back. Warm, familiar. I felt fingers trace my spine. Not touching skin, but close enough that every nerve screamed. The smell was everywhere now, inside me, coating my lungs, my thoughts. "I live where you breathe," she murmured. "Where you sleep." The pressure increased, not painful, just insistent, claiming. When I woke the next morning, the apartment was silent. No scent, no whispers. For one brief, terrifying moment, I thought it was over. Then I inhaled. The smell rose from inside my chest. It didn't matter where I went after that. New apartment, new city, new life. The scent came with me, faint at first, then stronger, blooming in enclosed spaces, in the dark, when I was most vulnerable. Sometimes, late at night, I feel her initials itching beneath my skin, as if something is trying to carve its way out. And sometimes, when I breathe in deeply, I swear I can hear her smiling, right behind me. I'm not someone who scares easily. I travel for work, stay in unfamiliar hotels, ride elevators at all hours. I've slept through fire alarms and shrugged off power outages. That's why it took me too long to understand that what happened that night wasn't just a malfunction, or stress, or my imagination trying to fill in gaps. My name is Adrien. I was 34 at the time, in the city for a 3-day conference I barely cared about. The hotel was old, one of those renovated grand places that still smelled faintly of dust beneath the lemon cleaner. Brass fixtures, patterned carpets worn thin along the paths people always walk. I checked in late, tossed my bag on the bed, and went back down to the bar because I couldn't sleep. That's where I met her. Her name was Elise. She was sitting alone, nursing a drink she hadn't touched in a while, watching the room like she was waiting for something to happen. When our eyes met, she smiled. Not wide, not inviting, just enough to acknowledge me. Felt like permission. We talked easily. Too easily. The bar hummed with low conversation and soft jazz. Glasses clinking, ice shifting. She laughed at the right moments, leaned in close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something clean and faintly sweet, like linen warmed by skin. When she suggested we go upstairs, it felt natural. Expected. The elevator was at the end of a long hallway, past a series of framed photographs of the hotel from decades ago. In some of them, people stood stiffly in front of the building, faces blurred by age or bad focus. I didn't linger on them. The elevator itself was small, wood-paneled, with a brass handrail worn smooth by thousands of hands. The air inside was slightly cooler than the hallway, carrying the faint smell of oil and metal. The doors slid shut with a tired sigh. "What floor?" I asked. "7, she said. I pressed the button. The doors closed fully, and the elevator began to rise. For the first few seconds, everything was normal. The soft whir of cables, the subtle sway. I leaned back against the wall, feeling the faint vibration through my shoes. Then the elevator jolted. Not a gentle stop. A hard, stomach-lurching drop, like the moment before a roller coaster plunges. My knees bent instinctively as the floor fell away beneath us for half a second before catching again. "What the hell was that?" I said, my voice already sharper than I meant it to be. Elise didn't react. She didn't even look surprised. She just smiled, watching the numbers above the door flicker. The display skipped past 7, 8, 9, 10. Then it went dark. The elevator began to descend. Fast. My stomach rose into my throat as the sensation of falling returned. Longer this time, sustained. The walls creaked. Something rattled above us, a metallic clatter echoing down the shaft. The lights flickered, plunging us into brief flashes of darkness. "Elise," I said, reaching for the handrail. "This isn't funny." She laughed softly, not nervously, not the laugh of someone scared. It was quiet, almost pleased. "We're not supposed to be going down," I said. "There's only one basement." The display flickered back on. B1, then B2, then symbols I didn't recognize. Characters that looked scratched rather than displayed, jagged and uneven. The air grew colder. Not a draft. An absence of warmth, seeping through my clothes, settling into my chest. My breath fogged faintly in front of me. I hit the emergency button. Nothing happened. I tried the door controls. Dead. The lights flickered again, and in that brief, harsh illumination, I saw something on the walls. Words, scratched into the metal panels, deep and erratic, like someone had carved them with their bare hands. You belong here. The letters were dark, almost wet-looking, as if they hadn't fully dried. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. Did you see that? I whispered. Elise nodded, still smiling. They always show themselves eventually. The elevator shuddered and slowed, grinding to a stop. The silence afterward was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of something far below us, like machinery breathing. The doors slid open. Beyond them was a hallway, but not one that matched the hotel above. The carpet was darker, stained in places. The walls were bare concrete, damp, the air thick with the smell of rust and something organic, sour and old. The lights overhead flickered weakly, casting long, uneven shadows. No room numbers, no exits, just a straight corridor stretching farther than it should have. I didn't move. Elise, I said carefully, we should stay in the elevator. She stepped forward without hesitation. The moment she crossed the threshold, something changed. The air shifted, pressing in on me, heavy and oppressive. From the edges of the hallway, shadows began to peel away from the walls. At first, I thought they were tricks of the light. Then they moved, dozens of them, tall, thin silhouettes, their outlines wavering like smoke caught in a draft. They lined the corridor, standing shoulder to shoulder, all facing us, facing her. They moved when she moved. When she tilted her head, they tilted theirs. When she lifted her hand, they did the same, perfectly synchronized, like reflections without mirrors. My mouth went dry. What is this place? She turned back to me, her smile wider now, stretching a little too far. It's where things settle, she said. Where they end up when they're tired of pretending they belong upstairs. The shadows leaned closer. I stepped back into the elevator, my foot catching on the lip of the door. I'm not going out there, I said. I don't belong here. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something beneath the calm surface. Not anger, not hunger, certainty. You already came down, she said gently. That's how it works. The shadows advanced in unison, their presence draining the warmth from the air. I felt it on my skin, like fingers brushing just close enough to feel but not see. The elevator shuddered behind me. I don't know what instinct took over. Panic, maybe, or something older. I lunged forward, slamming my hand against the door controls, hammering the button again and again. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the doors began to close. Elise didn't rush. She didn't struggle. She just watched me, smiling, as the gap narrowed. You can visit, she said softly, once you know the way down. The doors sealed with a heavy thud. The elevator shot upward. I collapsed against the wall, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. The lights steadied. The display flickered back to normal numbers. 7. The doors opened onto a perfectly ordinary hallway. Warm light, patterned carpet, distant voices. A couple walked past without looking at me. I stumbled out and ran to my room, slamming the door behind me, locking it twice. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I checked out early. I didn't mention the elevator. I didn't ask about basements. But as I waited for my ride in the lobby, I caught my reflection in the polished brass of a luggage cart. For just a moment, there was a shadow behind me, smiling. I've replayed that night so many times that the memories feel worn thin, like a tape stretched too far. Some details blur, others sharpen until they cut. I'm telling this now because pretending it didn't happen hasn't worked. Because she's still here, in ways I can't fully explain. And because if someone hears this and recognizes the signs early, maybe they'll do better than I did. My name is Jonah. I was 31 when it happened, working freelance graphic design from my apartment downtown. Most of my work came through apps, logos, social media ads, branding for small businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. I spent most nights alone, headphones on, city noise humming through the windows like a distant tide. That night started like dozens of others. I'd matched with her earlier that week. Her name was Claire, according to the app. Her profile was minimal. No red flags, no dramatic quotes, just a few photos that felt oddly timeless. No obvious filters, no clutter in the background. She suggested we meet at my place instead of going out. Said she hated crowds. I agreed without much thought. I liked the idea of staying in. She arrived just after 9. The knock was soft but deliberate. 3 taps, perfectly spaced. When I opened the door, the first thing I noticed was the temperature. The air behind her felt colder than the hallway should have been, like she'd stepped out of a refrigerated space. She smiled politely, holding a bottle of wine. "Hope that's okay," she said. Her voice was calm, flat, but not unpleasant. I stepped aside to let her in, and the cold followed her, slipping past my ankles like a draft. We talked. We drank. It was fine. Not great, not awkward. Just normal. She sat on the couch, hands folded loosely in her lap, posture straight but relaxed. Her eyes were striking, not in color, but in focus. She never seemed to blink at the wrong time. Never looked away mid-sentence. At some point, I realized I was doing most of the talking. She asked questions, listened carefully, nodded at the right moments. When she laughed, it felt slightly delayed, like she was mirroring me instead of reacting. Still, nothing overtly wrong. Around 11, I yawned and said I might call it a night. She tilted her head, considering. "That's okay," she said. "I can stay a bit longer." I smiled awkwardly. "I mean, I was kind of hoping." "I know," she interrupted gently. "Just a bit longer." Something about the way she said it made my skin prickle, but I ignored it. I went to the kitchen to pour myself some water, needing the excuse to stand up, to breathe. When I came back, she was standing in the living room, examining the framed photos on my wall. Childhood pictures, family vacations. She leaned close to one, her breath fogging the glass. "You were happier here," she said. I frowned. "You don't know that." She smiled without turning around. "You look like you thought you were safe." I laughed, uneasy. "That's a weird thing to say." She turned then, her eyes glinting in the low light. "Is it?" I checked the time on my phone. Nearly midnight. "I think I'm going to walk you out," I said, more firmly this time. She nodded. "Of course." But when I grabbed my jacket and opened the door, the hallway beyond was dark. Not dim dark. The lights that were always on flickered weakly, then went out completely. The air smelled stale, like something long closed. Claire stepped up beside me. "Maybe not right now." I hesitated. The building was old. Power outages happened. Still, the unease crawled deeper into my chest. "Just give it a minute," she said, already turning back inside. I followed. Minutes passed. Then more. The lights didn't return. My phone had no signal, no Wi-Fi. I tried to laugh it off, pacing the apartment. "I'm going to step outside anyway," I said. "I'll walk you down the stairs." She was sitting on the couch again, hands folded, waiting. "You already tried that." "I'll try again." I walked to the bathroom first, splashed water on my face. The mirror reflected me clearly, but behind my reflection, for just a fraction of a second, I thought I saw her standing in the doorway. I spun around. Empty. My heart raced. "Claire." "In the living room," she called. I stepped out. She was exactly where she'd been. "I don't feel great," I admitted. "I think you should go." Her smile widened slightly. "You always say that part." The words hit me like ice water. "What do you mean, always?" She stood. As she moved toward me, I realized something horrifying. She hadn't walked. She just appeared closer. I backed toward the kitchen. She followed, always just a step ahead of where she should have been. When I turned sharply and ran for the front door, she was already there, blocking it, still smiling. "Bathroom," I muttered, darting past her. I slammed the door behind me, locking it. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone. I dialed a friend. No signal. I tried 911. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed. Incoming call. From my own number. I stared at the screen, breath shallow. It stopped ringing after a few seconds, then buzzed again. Same number, same name, me. I turned the faucet on full blast, trying to drown out the pounding in my ears. The mirror fogged over from the steam. As I wiped it clear with my sleeve, words appeared in the condensation, as if written from the other side. "Why do you keep running?" I screamed. The bathroom door creaked open behind me. Claire stood there, head tilted, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "You can't lock me out," she said calmly. "This is my appointment too." I shoved past her, bolting into the living room, grabbing my keys, my wallet, anything I could carry. I yanked the balcony door open and stepped into the cold night air. The city lights were gone. Outside my building was not the street I knew, but an endless stretch of darkness, flat and soundless, like a void waiting patiently. No cars, no stars, just black. Behind me, Claire inhaled deeply. "You always check here next." I spun around. "What do you want from me?" She looked genuinely curious. "To stay. I don't know you." She stepped closer, her smile stretching unnaturally wide. "You will." I stumbled back inside, slamming the door. The apartment felt smaller now, the walls closer, the air heavier. The smell had changed, metallic, sharp, like electricity before a storm. My phone buzzed again. This time, dozens of missed calls filled the screen. Hundreds, all from me. Voicemails began to download on their own. I pressed one, hands trembling. My own voice filled the room, panicked, sobbing. "She won't leave. She keeps smiling. Please, if this is you, don't answer the door. Don't let her in." Another voicemail played automatically. Same voice, same terror, different background noise, sirens, wind, silence. I dropped the phone. Claire watched me, expression serene. "You get so dramatic near the end." "What end?" I whispered. She stepped into the bedroom. When I followed, she was gone. I searched every room, closets, under the bed. Nothing. Relief washed over me, brief and fragile. Then I heard breathing. Not from any one place, from everywhere. The walls seemed to pulse faintly, like veins beneath skin. The lights flickered, revealing subtle distortions in the corners of the room, places where shadows bent inward. My phone buzzed one last time. A text message. From me. "She's still there. She never leaves. She just gets better at hiding." I don't remember blacking out, but I woke on the floor as dawn light crept through the windows. The apartment looked normal, quiet, empty. No sign of Claire. No smell. No shadows. I laughed hysterically, relief crashing over me in waves. I was safe. It was over. Then I checked my phone. Hundreds of missed calls. And one new message, timestamped just seconds ago. From an unknown number. "I'm in the room with you right now. You just finally stopped seeing me." The air behind me shifted slightly, like someone settling in to wait. I never cared much about tattoos before that night. I didn't hate them, didn't love them, just saw them as stories people chose to wear on their skin. Ink as memory, ink as identity. That was before I learned some stories don't stay still once they've been written. My name is Ryan. I was 35, recently divorced, living alone in a city that never quite felt like home anymore. I'd started going out more than I used to. Not to party, just to sit among strangers so the silence of my apartment wouldn't feel so loud. That's why I was at the bar that night, a dim, low-ceiling place tucked between a tattoo studio and a closed-down cinema. The kind of bar where the lights are intentionally bad and no one asks too many questions. She was already there when I arrived. I noticed her because of the tattoos. You couldn't not notice them. Her arms were sleeved from shoulder to wrist in dense, intricate designs, geometric patterns, animals, symbols I didn't recognize. Ink spilled down her collarbones and disappeared beneath the fabric of her black top. Even her neck carried thin, elegant lines that curved toward her jaw. They were beautiful, hypnotic even. She caught me staring and smiled, slow and unoffended. "Go ahead," she said. "Everyone does." "Sorry," I muttered. "They're just incredible. Thank you." Her voice was calm, almost intimate, like she already knew me. They're very personal. I bet, I said. She shifted on her stool, and for just a second, I thought one of the designs on her forearm moved. Just a subtle ripple like ink disturbed by water. I blinked, and it was still again. I blamed the low light, the alcohol I hadn't even started drinking yet. Her name was Mira. We talked about art, about the city, about regrets we laughed about because admitting they still hurt felt too vulnerable. The bar smelled like stale beer and citrus cleaner, the air warm and heavy. Music hummed softly in the background, something slow and instrumental. The more we talked, the more aware I became of her skin. Not in a sexual way, at least not at first, but in the way you become aware of movement at the edge of your vision. The tattoos seemed restless. Not dramatic, not obvious. Just subtly alive, lines tightening and loosening, shapes shifting as if adjusting themselves. "You okay?" she asked at one point. "Yeah," I said quickly. "Just tired." She studied me for a moment, eyes sharp, amused. "They don't usually notice this early." My stomach tightened. "Notice what?" She didn't answer, just smiled and took a sip of her drink. At some point, I leaned closer, pretending to examine one of the designs on her wrist. A series of looping lines that almost formed letters. Almost. My breath caught. The lines rearranged themselves slowly, deliberately, like muscles flexing beneath skin. They spelled 3 words. "I see you." I pulled back so fast my stool scraped loudly against the floor. "What's wrong?" she asked, though there was something pleased in her expression now. "Your tattoo," I said. My mouth felt dry. "It just moved," she finished gently. I stared at her. "That's not funny." "I'm not joking." I looked again. The words were gone, replaced by the original pattern. Static, beautiful, innocent. "You're messing with me?" I said, forcing a laugh. "Some kind of trick." "Does it feel like a trick?" she asked. I didn't answer. We should have parted ways then. I should have paid my tab and left, chalked it up to stress or imagination. Instead, I stayed, because part of me, some dark, curious part, wanted to see it again, wanted proof I wasn't losing my mind. The next change came when I blinked. Just a normal blink, a reflex. When my eyes opened, new words crawled across the inside of her forearm, the ink stretching and twisting into crude letters. "Don't check your phone yet." My phone buzzed on the bar. I froze. Mira watched my face carefully. "What did it say?" I swallowed. "Nothing." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" I checked my phone despite myself. A missed call from my ex-wife. No voicemail. I looked up, heart racing. The words on her arm were gone, replaced by a new pattern, this one sharp and angular. "Told you," she said softly. I stood up. "Okay, I don't know how you're doing this, but I need to leave." "Ryan," she said. The sound of my name from her mouth sent a chill through me. I'd never told her. "Sit," she continued, not raising her voice. My legs obeyed before my mind caught up. The bar felt quieter now, like the sound had been turned down. The bartender moved slowly, his face unfocused, like he was underwater. Other patrons blurred at the edges, their conversations fading into unintelligible murmurs. Mira leaned closer, her tattoos shifting more openly now, designs sliding into new configurations across her skin. "You don't have to be afraid," she said. "They're just showing you what you already carry." "What is this?" I whispered. "A map," she replied. "Of you." I blinked again. The ink on her chest twisted, darkening, forming a date. The night my father died. My breath hitched. "Stop." I blinked again, tears stinging my eyes. New words. "You never said goodbye." My hands trembled. "How do you know that?" She reached across the bar and took my wrist. Her touch was warm, grounding, and wrong. The tattoos on her hand slithered over her knuckles, forming tiny arrows that pointed at me. "Because you're standing right here," she said. "And they respond to proximity." Proximity to what? To truth. I yanked my hand free and staggered back, nearly knocking over my stool. The bar snapped back into focus, the noise, the people, the music. No one seemed to notice anything strange. "I'm leaving," I said, louder than I meant to. Mira didn't stop me. "Careful," she said as I walked away. "They like reflections." I didn't stop running until I reached my apartment. I slammed the door, locked it, leaned against it, chest heaving. The familiar smells of dust and detergent grounded me. Safe. Alone. I went straight to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. The mirror showed only me, pale, shaken, eyes bloodshot. Then I noticed something behind my reflection. Words. Faint at first, barely visible, like condensation on glass. Blink. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The mirror cleared. Nothing there. "This isn't real," I muttered. I avoided mirrors after that. Covered the bathroom one with a towel. Turned picture frames face down. Even so, I felt watched. Like something just beneath the surface of the world was paying attention. That night, I dreamed of ink crawling beneath my skin, tracing lines along my veins, mapping me from the inside out. I woke drenched in sweat, the echo of Myra's laughter still ringing in my ears. The next day, it got worse. Reflections followed me everywhere. Store windows, car doors, darkened phone screens. In each one, for just a split second, I saw her. Not standing beside me, but layered over my reflection, her tattoos writhing, rearranging. "I see you. You should have left. You always run." Every blink brought new words, new memories, regrets I'd buried so deeply I'd almost forgotten them. Things I'd said, things I hadn't, moments I'd chosen myself when someone else needed me more. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I returned to the bar, desperate, furious, terrified. She was there. Same seat, same calm smile. "I told you they'd follow," she said. "Make it stop," I demanded. "I don't care how, just stop." She studied me, her tattoos already shifting, words blooming across her arms and neck. "You want to be seen. You always did." "I want to be left alone," I said. She stood, slowly. As she did, her skin changed completely. The designs unraveled, spreading across her body in dense, chaotic motion, forming images instead of words. My childhood home, my ex-wife crying at the kitchen table, my father in a hospital bed, eyes open but empty. Every fear, every failure, every version of myself I hated. "You gave them shape," Mira said softly. "I just wore the ink." The bar lights flickered. The walls seemed to breathe. I ran. Out the door. Down the street. Past storefronts and traffic and strangers who glanced at me like I was just another man having a bad night. But every reflective surface carried her. Car windows showed her smiling face instead of mine. Puddles rippled with her tattoos. Even shadows seemed to form her outline. Her laughter followed me, whispering at the edges of my hearing. By the time I reached my apartment, my vision was swimming. I locked myself inside and collapsed against the wall. The whisper came from the mirror behind the towel. "You can't unsee yourself," she murmured. "I haven't slept properly since. Sometimes, when I blink, I see new words, written not on her skin, but on mine, reflected back at me from every dark surface." I don't know if Mira was ever real, or if she was just the shape my regrets needed to take to finally confront me. All I know is this: the tattoos are still moving, and they haven't finished writing yet. I used to think fear had a sound, something obvious. Screaming tires, breaking glass, a shouted warning too late to matter. I know better now. Fear can be quiet, can idle at the curb with its headlights off and wait patiently for you to notice it. My name is Daniel. I'm not reckless, not adventurous. I work in logistics for a mid-sized shipping company, the kind of job where your biggest thrill is shaving 5 minutes off a delivery route. After my last relationship ended, I tried dating apps mostly to prove to myself that I could still talk to strangers without flinching. That's how I met her. Her name was Elise. She had a soft laugh, the kind that slipped out before she could stop it, and she liked quiet places. When she suggested meeting at a small park on the edge of town, one with walking trails and a pond instead of playgrounds and crowds, I agreed without hesitation. It sounded safe, neutral, normal. I arrived just after sunset. The sky was bruised purple and orange, cicadas buzzing in the trees. The park's gravel lot was mostly empty, except for one thing that immediately pulled my attention. A black van sat near the far fence line. No markings, no plates I could see from where I parked. The windows were so dark they swallowed the fading light. The engine wasn't running, but something about it felt alert, like an animal pretending to sleep. I told myself I was being paranoid. I'd spent too much time reading horror forums and listening to true crime podcasts. It was probably a contractor's van, or someone fishing after dark. Still, I locked my car. Elise arrived a few minutes later, gliding out of the shadows like she'd been there the whole time. She wore a light jacket despite the lingering warmth, her hands tucked casually into the pockets. "You look tense," she said, smiling. I nodded toward the van. "That thing been here long?" She glanced at it, barely a second, then laughed. Quick, bright sound. "Oh, that? Probably nothing. This park gets weird vehicles all the time." Her dismissal should have comforted me. Instead, it made my skin prickle. We walked along the path, the crunch of gravel loud beneath our feet. The smell of damp earth and old leaves hung in the air. Conversation flowed easily enough: work, favorite foods, childhood pets, normal things. But every so often, I felt her watching me when I wasn't speaking, her gaze heavy, measuring. When we looped back toward the lot, the van was still there. Same spot, same angle. I slowed. "It hasn't moved." "So?" she said lightly. "You going to let a parked car ruin the night?" I hated how reasonable she sounded. I hated even more that I let myself be convinced. "Want to get coffee?" I asked. "There's a place open late near my apartment." Her smile widened. "I'd like that." We drove separately at first. I pulled out of the lot, checking my mirrors more than necessary. When I reached the main road, I saw it. The van eased out behind me. No headlights, just a dark shape sliding into motion. My pulse quickened. I took the first turn I could, then another. The van followed, smooth and unhurried, like it knew exactly where I was going. At the next light, I pulled over abruptly and parked. The van rolled past without slowing, disappearing down the street. I exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping my throat. "See? You're losing it," I muttered to myself. My phone buzzed. "Elise, why did you stop?" "Thought I dropped something," I typed back. When I started driving again, I didn't see the van. Not until 3 blocks later, when it appeared in my rearview mirror like it had always been there. I arrived at the coffee shop with my nerves frayed. Elise was already inside, waving from a corner table. The warmth and light felt like a lifeline. I scanned the street through the window. The van was parked across the road. My hands trembled as I wrapped them around my cup. "Okay," I said quietly once she sat down. "I don't think that's nothing." She followed my gaze and leaned closer, her voice dropping. "You noticed it too." My stomach sank. "You said I didn't want to scare you," she whispered. "But you can't acknowledge them. Not openly." "Them?" I echoed. She met my eyes, and for the first time, her expression wasn't playful. It was almost pitying. "You shouldn't have come tonight." I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly. A few people looked over. "I'm leaving," I said. "Right now." She didn't stop me, just watched, her hands folded neatly on the table. Outside, the air felt colder. I walked quickly to my car, heart hammering. The van's engine hummed softly now, a low vibration I felt through the pavement. I got in, locked the doors, and started driving. The van followed. Every turn, every light. Sometimes it fell back, letting other cars slip between us. Sometimes it was right on my bumper, its dark grille filling my mirror. I called Elise. She answered immediately. "Tell me this is some kind of joke," I said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "You're doing well," she said. "Just keep driving." "Why is it following me?" "It's not following you," she corrected gently. "It's accompanying us." "Us?" I snapped. "You're not even here." A pause. Then, softly, check your mirror. My reflection stared back at me from the rear view. I smiled. I didn't. I slammed on the brakes, nearly causing a collision. Horns blared. My heart felt like it was trying to claw out of my chest. I looked again. My face was normal, pale, terrified. You're imagining things, Elise said. That happens near the end. What end? I demanded. She sighed, like a teacher disappointed in a student. You weren't supposed to notice so much. I hung up. I drove without direction, weaving through unfamiliar streets. The city thinned into industrial zones, warehouses looming like blind giants. The van never left. Its presence pressed against my thoughts, squeezing tighter with every mile. At a red light, I glanced at my mirror again. The smile returned. Slow, deliberate. My lips stayed still. I screamed and tore the mirror off its mount, flinging it into the back seat. The glass shattered, the sound sharp and final. For a moment I felt relief. Then the dashboard display flickered. My reflection stared back from the dark screen, eyes too wide, mouth stretched into that same awful grin. You can't outrun yourself, it mouthed silently. The van's headlights finally turned on. They flooded my car with white light, erasing the world beyond my windshield. I floored the accelerator, blowing through the red light, tires squealing. Somehow I made it to my apartment complex. I parked crookedly, jumped out, and ran. I didn't look back. Inside, I slammed my door and collapsed against it, gasping. The familiar smells, old carpet, takeout containers, my own sweat, grounded me. My phone buzzed. Elise, I'm sorry. I tried to make it gentle. I didn't reply. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the van idling outside, felt its presence like a weight on my chest. Just before dawn, exhaustion dragged me under. I woke to sunlight streaming through my window. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then I noticed the sound. An engine, low and patient, directly beneath my window. I didn't look. I moved out that week, changed my number, deleted every app. I thought distance would help. I thought time would dull the memory. But sometimes, when I'm driving at night, I see it. A black van, headlights off, keeping pace. And sometimes, when I catch my reflection in the mirror, it smiles first. I've told this story only a handful of times, usually late at night, when the room is quiet and the listener swears they won't interrupt. I always start by saying this. I am not paranoid, I am not schizophrenic, and I was not drunk or high when this happened. I was living a painfully ordinary life, and that's what makes it worse. Ordinary lives don't come with warnings. My name is Adrien. I was 29 when this happened, working as a junior editor for a local publishing house. My days were predictable. Commute, fluorescent lights, manuscripts that blurred together, microwave dinners eaten alone. I didn't mind the solitude. After a messy breakup 2 years earlier, solitude felt safer, controlled. The night everything started, I downloaded a dating app out of boredom more than loneliness. I told myself I'd delete it by morning. Instead, I matched with her within minutes. Her profile name was L. Just the letter. No last name, no bio beyond a single line. Conversation matters more than photos. Her pictures were unremarkable but striking in a quiet way. Dark hair, neutral expression, eyes that seemed to look slightly past the camera, as if focused on something behind it. I hesitated before messaging her. She messaged first. "L, you hate small talk too." It wasn't a question. I frowned at the screen and typed back. "Guessing?" The reply came instantly. "L, you skip intros in books. You pretend it's because you're busy, but really you're afraid of wasting time on things that don't matter." A chill slid through me, subtle but unmistakable. I told myself it was a lucky guess. Plenty of people hated small talk. Plenty skimmed book intros. Still, my fingers hovered before typing. That's oddly specific. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. "L, you slept with the light on until you were 12 because you were afraid someone would stand in your doorway and watch you breathe." My stomach tightened so hard it hurt. No one knew that. Not my ex. Not my parents. I'd never said it out loud, not even as a joke. The memory came rushing back. The faint glow under my bedroom door, the certainty that darkness meant being seen. I stared at the message, my pulse thudding in my ears. I considered blocking her, deleting the app, powering off my phone. Instead, I typed, "Who is this?" Several seconds passed, long enough for my anxiety to swell. Then, someone who listens. I didn't sleep that night. Every buzz of my phone made my heart leap, but no more messages came. In the morning, exhaustion dulled my fear into something manageable. Rational. She could have researched me. Social engineering. Maybe I'd mentioned something once online and forgotten. The mind fills gaps with dread when it's tired. At lunch, my phone buzzed again. You still check mirrors longer than necessary. I was standing in the restroom, staring at my reflection when it arrived. I dropped the phone. From that point on, the messages came constantly. Not spammy, not frantic. Calm. Observant. They described things as I did them or moments before. You're about to reread that sentence because it feels important. You're thinking about your mother's voicemail from last week and pretending it didn't bother you. Your left knee aches when it rains. You've never told anyone that. I stopped replying, but it didn't matter. She didn't need responses. By the third day, my nerves were shredded. I jumped at footsteps behind me, slept in short, shallow bursts. I taped over my laptop camera and unplugged my smart speaker. Still, the messages continued. On Friday afternoon, one final text appeared. Meet me tonight, 9 p.m., Café Nocturne. I'd never told her where I lived, but Café Nocturne was 3 blocks from my apartment, a place I'd gone twice, both times alone. I typed, "I'm not coming." The reply was immediate. You will. You're tired of wondering." She was right. That scared me more than anything else. At 8:45, I put on my jacket and left. The cafe was dimly lit, all amber bulbs and soft jazz. The smell of espresso and old wood wrapping around me like a blanket. A handful of patrons sat scattered around, murmuring into cups. She was already there. She looked like her photos, but sharper somehow, more real than she had any right to be. She sat with her hands folded, eyes lifting the moment I stepped inside. "Hi, Aaron," she said. I'd never told her my name. I sat because my legs felt weak. But close, I noticed her scent, not perfume exactly. Something clean and metallic beneath it, like rain hitting hot pavement. "How do you know all this?" I asked, skipping pleasantries. She smiled faintly. "You don't remember inviting me?" "I would remember that." "Would you?" she asked gently. I opened my mouth to argue, then froze. A flicker of doubt passed through me, unwelcome and invasive. She leaned forward. "You asked for someone who would understand you. Someone who could see you completely. That's not." "You typed it," she interrupted. 3 nights ago. Deleted it before sending. But the thought was there. My head throbbed. "You can't read minds." She didn't answer that. Instead, she said, "You still feel guilty about your brother." My breath caught. "That night you didn't answer the phone," she continued softly. "You tell yourself it wouldn't have changed anything. But part of you knows it might have." The cafe noise faded. The clink of cups, the low music. It all dulled beneath the rush of blood in my ears. "Stop," I whispered. She tilted her head. "I haven't told you the worst part yet." I stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. Several heads turned. "I'm leaving." Her eyes followed me as I backed away. "If you leave now," she said calmly, "you'll never know how much of you is already gone." I walked out. The night air was cold, biting. I broke into a jog, then a run, not stopping until I reached my apartment. I locked the door, slid to the floor, and laughed. A thin, hysterical sound. My phone buzzed. You always run when you're close to understanding." I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and fell silent. For a moment there was peace. Then I noticed the mirror above my dresser. Her face stared back at me. I spun around. The room was empty. My reflection was gone, replaced by her calm expression, lips curved in a knowing smile. "You're tired," she said, her voice coming from everywhere at once. "You let me in because you wanted to be known." Covered my ears. "Get out of my head." She stepped closer. No, the reflection did. The glass rippled as if it were water. "I'm not in your head," she said softly. "I'm in the spaces you never showed anyone." Every reflective surface began to change, the dark TV screen, the window, the microwave door. Her face multiplied, watching from every angle. "You can't leave," she whispered. "You're already with me." I don't remember how long it lasted. Minutes, hours, time fractured. At some point, exhaustion pulled me under. I woke on the floor at dawn. The mirrors were normal again. My phone lay cracked but silent. I moved out the next day. New number, new apartment, no dating apps. It didn't matter. Sometimes, when my phone buzzes with an unknown number, the message is already there before I unlock it. "Oh, I still know you." And when I look in the mirror too long, I swear my reflection hesitates, just long enough to smile before I do.